Good afternoon. My name is Kira Scruggs. Today is July 16th, 2018. This video is for Reading 520 at Concord University. The professor is Dr. William Williams. And this assignment is a book study that would typically take place in school, but it's a summer class, so that makes it a little bit difficult. The book that we will be discussing is Reading Don't Fix No Chevys. The authors are Michael W. Smith and Jeffrey D. Willem. And it's about literacy for young men, particularly an issue that we deal with in our area. This is a list of the boys that this book follows. There are 24 of them, ranging from different ethnicities, different areas, specifically rural, suburban, privileged areas, and also based on their performance in school being high, low, or average. A big thing that this book discusses is the gender roles that play into reading education for young boys. This is something that I have seen. I've only been teaching a year. The boys don't take it seriously. They feel that they shouldn't take it seriously and that it doesn't matter. This is actually a book from a previous class of Dr. Williams, and it was a book that I felt really hit home in our area. The first section of the book is just identifying the problems, and that's what we will talk about in this first video. The other two videos will have separate topics based on things later in the book. The first section, like I said, identifies many of the issues based on mainly gender roles and the assumed gender roles that many young boys fall into, such as, well, I need to be the manly man that doesn't show any weakness, and a lot of boys do associate reading and studying hard and working hard in school as being a nerd or a derogatory trait, opposed to something positive and something that can improve their future. Boys generationally do not feel that reading is something they are interested in. And a key point into getting boys interested into reading is they must be reading about something that they do care about or they are interested in. If you hand him a book about mermaids and princesses, he is much less likely to be interested in it than giving him a book about monster trucks or something of the like. And the first section of this book discusses that there have been a multitude of studies identifying the issues, but none of those studies have really expressed a solution to the problems. Boys often compare themselves to each other, and the boys that they respect and look up to, if they don't read or if they don't enjoy things like that, they're not going to actively seek out these things for them to be interested in it. However, if they want to learn more about something they are already interested in outside of school and outside of an educational basis, they will look farther into it in order to better understand it, such as if they were fixing a car, hence the name Reading Don't Fix No Chevys. There's also a greater concern about the psychological health of boys who are being so persuaded against these things that are obviously good for them. And that relates into things such as violence, and they tend to draw lines between each other as to, you know, if you read too much, you're a nerd, or you're whatever else they call each other. But if you stay within that predetermined range, you're safe within the grouping. When it comes to boys and literacy, the gender roles are very heavily, or a big impact. Boys take longer to learn to read, and these are some facts from page 10 under a summary of the research on gender and literacy. Boys take longer to read than girls. Boys read less than girls. Girls tend to comprehend narrative texts and most expository texts better than boys do. And boys tend to be better at information retrieval and work-related literacy than girls are. So if they are working on a vehicle and they read how to fix something, they have a higher comprehension rate on that topic than they would on how to organize a science project or something like that. And that's just based on achievement. The general attitude toward reading for boys is not a positive one typically. They don't look highly upon themselves. They may be an average or even a high level reader, but they tend to underestimate themselves. They don't value the activity, much less than girls, in fact. They have less interest in leisure reading and would much rather read for the purpose of having to use that information. If it's something they can use in their life, they are much more likely to read it and comprehend it than if it's just reading about something that happened 100 years ago for fun. More boys are open about saying that they don't read than girls are. And they do spend less time reading and are less interested in reading. As far as choice, they obviously, boys and girls are going to typically have different interests when it comes to what they do want to read. Like I said earlier, with the princesses and unicorns versus learning how to fix something, or skateboarding, or something that is considered boyish. And although in today's society it's not proper to classify activities or anything like that as boyish or girlish, for the sake of this, there are activities and topics that are found to be more interesting to boys than they are girls, and vice versa. Boys are much more inclined to read informational texts, and that goes back to their attitude about reading being that they would much rather read something that they can use than read something to just have the information in their head. They are more likely to read magazine articles and newspaper articles. They also would rather read a graphic novel and comic book than, say, a regular novel or novella. Boys also tend to resist reading stories about girls, whereas girls don't care who the characters are as long as they are interested in the story. Boys are more enthusiastic about reading electronic texts than girls. Now, this book was published in, let's see here, 2002. I do feel that this fact may be a little bit off, considering the reliance on technology that we have today versus then. I think that if this study was reevaluated, the difference between how many boys and girls like versus dislike a electronic text, I think there would be a smaller gap in the decision making. Boys like to read about hobbies, sports, and things they might do or be interested in doing, versus historical or anything that they can't go out and find a way to do or create or experience in real life. So that, again, comes back to the tie to they need that real life anchor to hold their interest, and they have to know that there's value to their everyday life, or not even necessarily everyday, but there has to be value to their life and their lifestyle in order for them to show interest in learning about it, specifically through reading. Boys are also more likely to read more nonfiction, informational texts, whereas girls are more likely to read fiction. Poetry is less popular with boys than girls, and boys tend to enjoy humor, and some are interested in science fiction or fantasy. The response to reading, which is the final thing that I will cover in this video, boys care about what the book looks like before they ever open the cover. It has to be engaging enough and interesting enough that when they see that book sitting on a bookshelf, they're like, hey, I think I want to look into that. Boys are also less likely to talk or even respond to their reading than girls are. If a girl reads a book, chances are, and they really like it, chances are they're going to tell their friends, hey, you really need to read this book, it's so cool. Whereas boys are not as open about the fact that they read it all, much less try to engage their friends in reading with them. Boys prefer active responses to reading, where they can physically do what they just read about. And boys tend to receive more open and direct criticism for weaknesses in their reading and writing, which is more of a discouragement for their reading and writing. Instead of having negative reinforcement, I feel that they need to have the positive reinforcement to show that while there can be room for improvement and corrections, there's no reason to be ashamed for what you can accomplish. And also, boys require more teacher time in co-ed settings. The teacher must pay attention to her students, all students, but particularly if you are focusing on reading, like I did this past year, you need to spend a little extra time focusing on the skills and the interests, and take note of the things that the boys in that class do enjoy versus they really were not engaged when we read this story about whatever. But the girls were engaged, but you can't stop there just because half of the class, or even if it was more than half of the class, was engaged. You have to have the entire group of students engaged in the same thing most of the time with our curriculum. And you need to spend extra time getting to know your students and finding out what they enjoy in order to find things that they will be able to use in real life. Because like I said before, and the main topic of this video is their anchor to real life circumstances is what holds their interest, and that will get them to continue reading and writing about the things that they are interested in. And that's the first step in becoming a better reader, is to find things that you're interested in and you want to learn about. But that's the first video. I'm almost out of time. Thanks for watching. Drop me a comment and look for the next video soon. Thank you.